always taking lecture, particularly afternoon hour. It is very difficult. So, but I hope our Shanmugam sir will overcome your mind resistance. So the topic, the first topic in afternoon session is identifying the non-plagiaristic research gap. So I hope as like the morning session, this session also is going to be very interactive session. You please note down the points, because I hope at the end of the session, sir is going to ask the questions like in the morning session. You please note it down. Thank you. So the session is for to you.
Okay, a very good afternoon indeed. Welcome you back. I hope you would have got some nutshell about what is the important aspects that you are supposed to concentrate on. Literature review in the morning. But fundamentally, I wanted all of you to remember the 14 steps of executing the research work. Okay? Why I insist that 14 step, if any system you want to be successful, you must have a systematic attitude, systematism to be developed. The systematism is a very important concept in life. If you are very systematic, you will not miss it, you will not fail it. So the research is not so new about it, but why I brought that 14 points in a good sequence, because you cannot start the tail with the beginning and you cannot make a mess of it. So you are supposed to know the sequential steps of 14 steps with the sequence. So that is the reason morning I was trying to gather if anybody can tell without seeing, they can tell the actual points. But I am not going to leave you without understanding that, even now also. So I will give you 5 minutes time. Please go through, not 5 minutes, at least 3 minutes of time. Please go through, and at the end of it, again you have to say that 14 steps at the end of this session. Why I say so, if you cannot remember the 14 steps, and you will not have a connectivity in what to do next, to find out the research gap, whether the research gap, finding research gap should come, or conceptualization of the research gap should come, or hypothesizing the research concept should come, or experimenting the hypothesis should come. So this sequence and the continuity should have a very proper flow. So that's the reason I say please be remembered. Whatever I told you that 14 steps, even at the midnight or even in your sleep, if you are a researcher, you should remember that. Because the steps that I am going to make it at the end of it as a practice today is very much connected with that 14 steps. If you can't remember that 14 steps, the test I am going to conduct at the end of this, you will miserably get less than 1 mark. So therefore, get to know what exactly the important points that you have to remember. Once again, I insist, steps in the research methodology, I told these 14 steps. Okay? In the morning, I was talking to you about in the third steps up to. So now my focus is to take you up to your 7th step. So from here, conceptualize the research gap. Before that, the chapter wise filtration and grouping and developing files for each chapter, paraphrasing the conclusions from the literature review by chapter wise, critical review of literature together with the summary table, and find, evaluate and confirm the research gap as your own original and non-plagiaristic gap, non-plagiaristic and non-obvious gap. So these 4 points we are going to deal you now, and of course I will end with the conceptualize, hypothesize and experiment your hypothesis. So up to 10th point we will be dealing now, and of course I may not deal these 4 points from 10 to 14, somebody else will take care of it. So please be remembered, you will start with the chapter wise filtration. So what is called filtration? Chapter wise filtration. Will escape kudunga? This அப்படியே zoom பண்ண முடியுமா? Right, okay. என்ன பண்ணீங்க?
Side ல இது வந்து close பண்ணிட்டேன்.
Okay, right, fine. So chapter wise filtration, grouping, develop files for each chapters. So why it is important to paraphrase or filter it, if you have a mess of information, when you are going for a methodology, when you are going for a parameterization, it will be very difficult for you if it's a complex information. That's why you are filtering it. Finalize the chapters, parameters that are important for your research topic. So actually before filtering, what are the chapters you are supposed to incorporate? What are the chapters that you are supposed to filter it? So you have to finalize at least the predominant chapters before you are actually going to filter it. So finalize the chapters, parameters that are important for your research topic. Confirm the parameters with your fellow researchers and supervisors that are really important or not. So you have to confirm with your supervisor and your fellow researchers that these parameters will have significant impact in your PhD thesis or not. Or you are choosing the parameter just for the sake of choosing. So you must choose the parameter which should have high impact at the end of your submitting thesis. The instruments should be available for measuring these parameters within Anna University or in a researchable distance before you confirm the parameters of interest. Say for example, you are taking a parameter. That parameter analysis or an instrumentation, nowhere it is available in India. So there is no point in choosing that parameter. So you have to confirm whether the adequate, for example, rheological parameters, rheometer, whether the rheometer is available within the institute or it is available in IISc, Indian Institute of Science Bangalore, or SAFE in IIT Madras. But please open your mind and have research scholars interaction with other IITs and other institutes, particularly Structural Engineering Research Institute in Chennai. There is a lot of research institutes are available within the radius of 2 to 3 kilometers. There is a CSIR complex available in Tharamani. It has NIO, National Institute of Oceanography Zonal Center. It has got National Environmental Engineering Research Institute Zonal Center. It has got SICRI Zonal Center. So there is a hub of CSIR Institute along with the SCRC. So you can go there, there is a beautiful library available and you can take the facility there and use it for, and also instrumentation. Particularly there are very advanced equipments facility available for the civil engineering people in SCRC Madras, Structural Engineering Research Institute Madras. So likewise in IIT Madras you have a very good SAFE department, sophisticated analytical instrumentation facility. In IISc Bangalore you can use a lot of instruments. There is an analytical facility there, that is outsourcing of analysis. So please be remembered, confirm the instruments available or not, whether it is accessible to you or not. So you must confirm those instruments before you confirm the parameters. The parameters should have high relevance for your research. Do not choose the parameters which is not so relevant. The bulk notebook with 300 pages can be split into many chapters and the important information can be written in each chapters from different authors. So I told you in the morning, you must have a 300 page notebook and 10 page or 15 page or 20 page split into every 20 page and make each 10 page or 20 page as a separate chapter, insert a small slip and write the title of the parameter. And after 20 pages, insert a small slip, write the title of the parameters. After 60th page, insert a small slip, write the title of the parameter. So when you look at the notebook in open, the strips which you have should tell you what are the parameters available. So directly you can open that particular parameter on 180th page, there is a pH, you can open that. So that is how when you filter your research paper, if you take a particular research paper, the research paper would have dealt with so many other parameters like pH, temperature, viscosity, rheology, Newtonian, so many parameters they would have dealt. So you can take down the pH parameters, relevant information about pH to the pH chapter, the temperature parameter to the temperature chapter, to the viscosity parameters to the viscosity chapter. So then when you open a particular one paper, then you take a next paper, similarly you write down, so first is Shan et al. The second paper is Win et al. So you go to the pH paper, Win et al. Optimize the pH at 7 or 8 like that. And then in the same paper, he would have told you about viscosity also. Go back to the viscosity chapter, open the strip, go to the viscosity chapter, add whatever relevant to viscosity. Likewise, the notebook information will fetch you a great information, great idea about each parameters. Even today, I give it to my PhD students and go through what I wrote it long back. What about PH in 80s and 90s, how it was? At least 90s. So I did in 90s. So 90s, how it was. So you will go through and understand about each parameters. So likewise, you also have to develop the informations, particularly on the bulk notebook. So you please buy a notebook. All of you must have the literature notebook. Please do remember. And all of you, please remember, you must have 3 important notebooks. One is called your lab book. Another one is called your meeting notebook. To discuss with your professor, to discuss with your guide, or discuss with your supervisor, whatever you are discussing, you must have a notebook. So what is important? Normally the professors in abroad, the effort taken by the professor by your mentor is more important than the effort taken by the student. What is there? The mentor or the guide or the supervisor will assess your status of mind on the first day when you meet him for a technical discussion. And he will have his own diary. That's what I said, supervisor's diary and student's diary is very important until you complete your PhD thesis. So your student's diary exclusively for your guide. That should not be written anything else other than your guide and yours discussion. So please have exclusive diary that you must have it at the end of your PhD thesis. You must submit that notebook if required for Center for Research, if required for your doctoral committee members, if required for elsewhere, to show that, to demonstrate to yourself that you have a gradual progressive research career with your mentor. So the first meeting, second meeting, third meeting. So once you finish your first meeting, the next scheduled date of meeting, time of meeting, you can write in there. And the next meeting you can go there, you can have discussions, whatever he tells, some graphs, some linear, some parameters he asks you to write. Please have guide notebook, mentors, supervisors notebook, exclusively one notebook. And the second notebook which I mentioned is the literature review notebook. This is very important. You must have a literature review notebook where you have a collective informations of all the literatures. Why I say so here, your software may be some virus, something might lost after some time. But your notebook written material is permanent for you at any time. You don't have to lose it. So please have a literature notebook. And the third important notebook, your lab book. That you must have a lab book, a proper dignified lab book. So before you complete your PhD in 3 years and 4 years, how many lab books you got it? That is your permanent asset, permanent property in your life. So the lab book will tell you, because you must have these 3 notebooks very importantly before you complete. At least by 3 years or 4 years, you would have completed some 10 notebooks or 20 notebooks of long size for your lab book. So review of literature will be 2 notebooks. And meeting notebook will be 1 notebook, a big notebook. So you can interrelate what is meeting notebook says, what is literature review notebook says, what is your lab book says. You can interrelate. Oh, professor said to analyze such and such parameters, and on the such and such date, you go back to your lab book. Yes, I started doing the such and such date. And the date methodology was not available. You go back to your literature review notebook. There the methodology was available. But whether lab book, whether meeting book, whether the literature book, you must write with the date. Whichever the date you are writing, today's date. Then only you can dig out and tell when this assignment was given to you. When did you, then only you can make a correlation between your literature review notebook and your lab book and your research diary and your supervisor's diary. So please be remembered, these 3 are very important for you to maintain it till you complete. And then this is one called notebook based literature review. The other one is called software based filtration. What is called software? Soft copy means software means it's not a software developed. Soft copy based, you can filter based on keywords in sciencedirect.com. So go to the sciencedirect.com. You got confirmed 10 keywords or 10 synonyms. First you put your first synonyms or keywords. There will be some hundreds of paper will come. Choose whichever the paper is relevant to you. Copy those abstract and develop a Word file. Keep on pasting that abstract alone. Abstract and authors and year and publications, list of the name of the journal, everything. Abstract together with the papers. Then you make a line and paste the second abstract. and you make a line, paste the third abstract. On that particular topic, you should not confuse it. On that particular topic, create, so go to the next keywords, type on the next keywords. So you will have a complete a list of papers published on it. Don't choose everything, choose which is mostly relevant to your topic, and those topic again go by abstract wise. Click an abstract, or the paper will come and the abstract will come, keywords will come, and the title of the author, title of the paper, everything will come. Copy all those and make it in the second file or second folder, and go to the second topic or second keywords, and then go to the third keywords or third parameter, and then go to the fourth keyword, fourth parameter. So you will have folders for each parameters, and this is where it's called a soft copy of creating or filtering the literatures and abstracts. So this is how you filter it based on the soft copy. Software based filtration, you can filter based on the keywords in sciencedirect.com, create folders for each parameters, chapters, copy the information and paste from each papers on an appropriate subchapters or parameters. Notebook based filtration, that I already told you here. The information written for each chapter should be from abstract, materials and methods, interesting interpretations, and also from conclusions. So you can filter it based on classification of methods. Like for example, if you are interested more of a methodology which somebody has adopted, you have planned to make a very complicated methodology, but somebody have made a very simplified methodology, and that methodology, that authors, the title of the paper, authors, you should never forget it. So you should carry forward. So at least in your literature review notebook, you must open it and write it a particular methodology chapter. This so-and-so author, Shan et al., was found to be very interesting methodology, please check it. So you will remember to adopt that methodology for doing an experiment or sampling methods like that. So paraphrase the conclusions from literatures chapter wise. So first you have filtered the literatures. What you did before, you have filtered, and you have filtered in a soft copy, or you have filtered into a hard copy by purchasing the notebook. So paraphrasing is putting or distributing the information specific to each chapters from the same papers up to at least 50 papers. So from the same paper, you would be putting or distributing the informations on chapter wise and create chapter wise conclusions, chapter wise informations. That's what is called paraphrasing, developing paragraphs with the phrased manner. And you have to phrase it out, what is the chapter, second chapter, third chapter, like that. Paraphrasing the information and distributing the information specific to each chapters from the same papers up to at least 50 papers. While paraphrasing the literature information, it should be in a chronological order by year wise up to latest recent years, and updating is also important till recent years. So when you make your paraphrasing the information, you can either put it first and then you can make it into chronological order, or while putting itself, the oldest paper, take it to the front, the recent paper, bring it back. So it should be in a chronological order. Why it should be so? Whenever you write a literature review for a research paper, or when you write it in an introduction, you mention the authors in a chronological order. That time you will be finding it very hard to dig out whether this should come first or that should come first or this should come first. You will be finding it very hard. But while you are paraphrasing itself, if you write it properly in a year wise, okay, this is the year wise, first latest paper, old paper, then 92, 98, 99, 2000, 2002. So while picking those and putting into information or thesis or in research papers, it will be very easy for you. You don't have to juggle around, oh, whether this is old, that is old, this is old, that is old, like that. So please make the paraphrasing the information into a chronological order by year wise, latest, recent, and so on. The beginning and end year of this literature information is very important. Which year your topic of research was started and which year it was ended, whether it's still continuing the topic of your research or not. Is it the very oldest research started 1910? Can you mention that 1910 paper into your review of literature? No, you cannot. Why? Because 1910, if you want to mention, that becomes a very old information. You cannot mention in your review of literature. But what you can mention, the 1910 paper should have been quoted by a review paper in the year 1990 or 2000 or 2010, the oldest review paper, if you take it, if that paper is covered, 1910 papers covered in the oldest review paper, if you mention that review paper into your literature article, it is more than enough, because you will be covering 1910 to 2005, because that review paper would have covered some base year to the last year. So what is more important here? You must refer a review paper, review article of your topic. And whenever you look at the review article, the topic, whenever you take a paper, if a hard copy of the printout, first you will write the name, because it is to know that your paper. On the right, you will find out the interesting information. You will write, this is the review paper, covered 40 years of the research done on this field. So starting year 1980 and end year 2020. So likewise, when you dig out a paper, you should, when you take out a paper, printed paper, you should write something on the top of it, just to recognize what is the significance of the paper. So whenever you take a printout, I told you minimum 50 papers you must have a hard copy, no doubt about it. So on those 50 papers, when you read the important information essential for your research, you have to write on the first page. What you can write? Oh, interesting methodology was adopted. An interesting methodology, viscometer was adopted in this research paper. Rheogram was adopted. So before you actually look into the entire paper, some gist of information should be written on the top of the paper. That's the practice. And as a researcher, I developed. That's what I'm trying to tell you also. So whenever you dig out the paper, but just look at a glance on the top of the first page, you will get some idea. Okay, this paper was review paper, but they covered 40 years. Oh, this paper has covered some advanced instrumentation method. Oh, this paper has covered some softwares. I have to verify this, check the software. Oh, this paper has covered some models. So likewise, the gist of the information, apart from abstract, you should not write what is existing in the abstract and again you rewrite and make a show off that, oh, I have written some information. But the information should be very unique to you, and it should not be a replicated information, and you have to write information which you should remember forever. So whenever you take a paper, immediately you look at, oh, this is the paper done by Turkey, oh, done in America, done in Canada, oh, this the paper was done in a very coldest climate. Some unique information, so you have to write it on the top of your paper, and that's what I say normally, you must make the proper evidence of the paper. So the data need to be in ascending order of productivity, as who has invented the lowest possible yield and until what levels of various authors have experimented and achieved using various approaches. So while you are paraphrasing, because whenever you write a critical review of literature, your critical review of literature will start based on the data specific informations, whereas your review of literature will start with chapter specific information, where your literature review will start with the topic specific information. So if you write in the paraphrasing itself, if you write exactly the data which author have produced maximum biodiesel of so much per kg of the litter, and when you refer the other paper, if somebody has produced only 10 liters, if some other author have produced 20 liters by adopting some other method, if you bring down after some years, this author has produced 20 liters using the another method, somebody else after some 2 years or 3 years would have produced 40 liters. Oh, this author have attempted this approach, produced 40 liters. And after some years, somebody would have attempted 100 liters. Oh, this author have, so they started from the 10 in a particular year. Next year they did, somebody else would have done to increase 20, and the next year somebody else would have done to increase 40, and the next year somebody else would have done to increase 100. So all this information, you must have it in a chronological order. Then only you will be able to have some perception, what is the base level and what is the recent level of thing, where you contribute to modify your approach and take from 100 liters to, I will take from 150 liters, that I am modifying this method, I am not going to use their approach, I am going to use a different approach, but my hypothesis is to enhance it further using a bimetallic catalase, or using a nanocatalyst, or using something else. So your novelty in approach, your novelty in research gap have to be unique compared to their benchmark level of their results that they have produced. So that's more important. So you can see here, find out what the non-attempted approaches. So in the paraphrasing, whenever you say, so or even whenever you read a literature review or research papers, you must understand, you got a concept on it of, yes, this could be a non-attempted approach. In that particular paper when you take it, oh, my approach was not attempted. So that you don't have to worry. In the next paper you take it, oh, my approach is not attempted. In the third paper you take it, oh, my approach is attempted partly. But you have to give importance to know what methods, what approach they followed. So likewise, find out what are the non-attempted approaches and what are its merits and demerits that the paper has confirmed. So why I say non-attempted approaches? If somebody said no, these approaches were not attempted, there could have been some lacuna, that is why they did not attempt. So you have to understand the lacuna and the demerit, therefore you will not again attempt it and not to waste your time on that. So where you will get all this information? From the literature review, from the paraphrasing the information. So once you paraphrase it, you will have just about P-gauge, just about a single parameter, you will have minimum 10 page of information, at least 50 authors information, which is adequate enough to gain a research gap. So that's what you have to make and find out the non-attempted approaches and what are its merits and demerits that the paper has confirmed. How to formulate a new pragmatic approach based on it. So while you are paraphrasing, you will come to know, oh, this approach was done by this author, this approach was done by this author, this approach was done by this author, but this approach has nobody has attempted. But again, what in the criticality you will go, what are the disadvantages that this approach was not attempted? Why people have not attempted? There should have been some disadvantages. Okay, by temperature we will have a controlling parameter. It need a minus 20 degree or minus 40 degree centigrade. Okay, I can simulate the temperature conditions required for minus 20. Let me carry out that experiment in there. So that becomes your approach. So likewise, whenever you find how to formulate a new pragmatic approach, that's what I said, pragmatic approach. So in the smart PhD thesis, what is smart PhD thesis? Anybody can say? All 5 together? Any one of you? Please? Specific? All of you please, I am just asking. Specific? Materialistic? After materialistic? Achievable? Not retainable, researchable. Time target, beautiful. So when you say researchable, what is the word we have used? Researchable, that is what I say, pragmatic approach. Okay? So let us think of pragmatic approach, whether my approach is pragmatic or not. Because I might think I am going to find whether water there in the Mars or not, that is my PhD topic. Can it be done in 3 years? So that's what pragmatic approach. So use very pragmatic approach, achievable approach, and once the paraphrasing is done, the next step is, what is next step after paraphrasing? Anybody? Next step? Critical? Yeah, come on, tell. Critical review of literature. Let us see what is there. Critical review of literature. Very good. Good clap. At least few of you remember. That's what the sequence you have to remember. If you do not remember the sequence, you will say go back to the first. Okay? So critical review of literature together with the summary table. I told critical review of literature together with the summary table. Now you tell me what is the difference between literature review, review of literature, critical review and summary of literature. Can anybody say? Title specific, very good. Next, enough. Next. Yeah, next, critical review of literature. Chapter specific. Critical review of literature. Data specific. That's it. So this you have to remember it. Okay, so that's what I mentioned here. Critical review of literature together with the summary table. What is called critically and non-criticality of research conclusions? I might feel something very critical, very critics, but they may not feel, somebody else may not feel, because they are more genius than me. So what it depends on how much of the research perception power I got, how many literatures I study, how many broad understanding I have in a particular topic is based on that only. I will have my critical ability to criticize. It become much better or not. So nowadays, even the 8th standard, 10th standard students, they play with in a mobile phone in a very much faster than college students. Why? Because they have a quick access to it. So that is what I say here. The critical ability depends on individual. For someone it is critics, but may not be critics for others. So how do you understand the depth of critical ability? Sir, I have gone so deeply into the subject what I am doing it. How to justify? I have gone very deep criticism of the subject. So a true researcher is to go as deep as possible, as critics as possible with the multiple parameters, you become a good researcher. So please do not mind, sir, critics means I should be critic. This is critics of authors, critics of authors' work, critics of authors' data, critics of published information, and you become specialist in evaluating the others' paper. That is a good practice, good training for you to become critics in the research papers. So too much depth of critical ability depends on how much is your perception power. What is your intelligent quotient and what is your emotional quotient? IQ and EQ. So it depends on your IQ and EQ. It depends on your perception power of perception. So when you want to have the very high power of perception, what this author says is wrong, is nonsense. This author says is not so relevant. That's the reason, because I remember when I was doing PhD in abroad, in the master student, my supervisor takes out a research paper and they give assignment, can you disprove this paper? That's an assignment for master student. Published papers, they take a printout of 20 copies and give it to everybody in the class, and can you disprove this paper? That is master's assignment, master student's assignment. So there you will find out the student's capability to criticize the data, the informations given in there. No sir, this equation was not fit perfectly. So they go back and work with that model and find out, yes, who is able to disprove that paper. So that is what, it depends on how your IQ and EQ, but all of you try to develop as your own point of your starting researcher. You can be a best researcher if you have practice to perfect it. You only need practice it, and you can be a true scientist. You can definitely win a Nobel Prize after your 50s or 60s if you want to really dedicate yourself very deeply into this topic. Okay, so do not put the information straightforward. Always compare the informations with other authors. Minimum 5 authors of one concept. Do not put the information straightforward. Do not put the information straightforward, because in literature review what they do it, they read literatures and they write San et al. Concluded this. That's all. Next, Van et al. Concluded this. Lin et al. Concluded this. That is not literature review. That is copy paste of informations. When you say literature review or review of literature, Shan et al. Concluded this. Similarly, Van et al. Concluded this. Contrarily, Lin et al. Made this statement. And supportingly, somebody else et al. Have made this. So, when you discuss your literature review topic, you have to discuss who are the similar statement, who are the dissimilar statement. So you have to group all the similar statement and group all the dissimilar statement. So more the number of cross references you give. So what is called a cross reference? Internal reference and back reference. Internal reference is when you write your research paper or when you write your thesis, a sentence. The pH is a very important parameter for maximizing the biogas yield. In bracket, you write authors, Van et al., Lin et al. More the number of authors you write, more your IQ, because the same concept, pH is an important parameter for maximized biogas yield, that you have referred minimum 5 authors. So when you put San et al. 1990 semicolon, Van et al. 1995 semicolon, Lin et al. 1996 semicolon, Pagani et al. 2010 semicolon. So if you put more authors in the cross reference, internal reference, that means you are comparing 5 peoples at a time. You are compared 5 peoples and got a similar concept of result. That is why you are able to make and a comparison. So the impact of pH of biodiesel yield was demonstrated by many researchers and concluded that pH between 6 to 9 yielded maximum biodiesel. Son et al. 98, Van et al. 99, Lean et al. 2004, Muthu et al. 2006, Palani et al. 2010 and 2020. 20, 10, 16, 4, 99, 98. So you are able to make minimum 5 authors. So when a reviewer read it, when a PhD thesis somebody is evaluating, you are able to compare 5 authors' work of a particular statement. You are really an intelligent researcher. If you put only one author, of course it may not be available. Not necessarily you should put 5, but it should be available also, because if it's a very recent research, only one author will be available. Don't make it for the sake of making it. Because nowadays there are softwares available. If an author or if a reviewer wanted to confirm whether you are truly mentioning it with the purpose, with the real statement, with the correct statement, or you are mentioning for the sake of mentioning, they can click that and go back to the paper and find out to put it that particular keyword and find out whether it is there or not. So you should not do that just for the sake of adding authors into the cross reference. It should have relevance, it should have purpose, and it should have definite meaning. So similarly, Lowery et al. Described the optimum pH for maximum biodiesel yield at 11, attributed to the high alkaline pH favored efficient esterification forming the alcohols from the esters. So when you have a similar statement, when you have a dissimilar statement, reasoning is more important. First is putting the data. Second is reasoning out why they got maximum, why they got minimum, what are the scientific facts and evidence supporting this to get maximum. What are the supporting parameters it is making you to get the maximum or minimum. So those you have to mention it. So what will be the next after critical review of literature? Finding the research gap. Beautiful, very good. So authors ascending order based on the years et al. And after author's name. So this is what I mentioned to you, internal referencing. You can see here 86, 86, 87, 93 and 94, and this is called internal referencing. What is called back reference? Whatever is mentioned in your bibliography, it's called back reference. And the bibliography it is mentioned, those are called back reference. So you have to use the back reference. What is called internal reference? The reference which is mentioned in between the text. That's called internal reference. So example of summary of literatures or critical review of literature. The enzyme you can mention here consists of 2 subunits, interacts with the NADH and so on. So hence the important bioprocess, so you can mention optimum pH and ORP. So what are the parameters we got? This is what is called a critical review of literature, interrelating each parameters. Optimum pH and ORP control he did, high organic loading rate was done by him, selection and pre-treatment was done by him, optimum NADH, NAD was done by him, optimum butyrate was done by him, avoid. So you can mention like this also. Who did what? So if you have paraphrasing the information properly, you can straight away put it into different orders, 2002, 2004 like that. So next is summary. You can mention it normally. You can start with many previous researches. So when you write literature, because I told you about the literature should critics of the previous researchers. So you will start with many researchers have attempted to produce biodiesel at an optimum pH of 6. What are the researchers you can mention? Okay, you can mention the next sentence, Dash et al. Found out the optimum. So you will find out that author. Who is supporting to that? Supporting to this author, Dash et al. Produced biodiesel yield on the same pH at a maximum. Similarly, you will find out the next sentence will be, contrarily, Dash et al. Did not find the maximum biogas yield at that particular pH attributed to these reasons. Similarly, supporting to that statement, supporting to this, Dash et al. Supported that the pH is an important factor for minimized biodiesel yield. However, there is a limited research has been done on this particular pH. Therefore, the present study attempted to evaluate or optimize. So your sequence should be like this. So then the next chapter, because I talked about only pH, the next chapter, besides pH, that means next paragraph, besides pH, temperature is also one of the important parameter for maximized biogas yield. Many authors have attempted to produce maximized biodiesel at 40 temperature. For instance, Dash et al. Concluded 40 temperature was high yielded maximum biodiesel. Similarly, Dash et al. Have concluded maximum biodiesel was possible. Supporting to this, Dash et al. Contrarily, Dash et al. Concluded that biodiesel at 45 pH was produced a minimum biodiesel, which is attributed due to, because whenever you say contrarily, you have to say reason. So whenever you say you are rejecting something, sir, I don't want this, but you have to say reason. Am I right or not? So you have to reason out when you say contrarily. So attributed due to, that is called reason, due to this. Then at the end of it, besides temperature, viscosity is one of the important parameters, plays a vital role. So you'll go to the next chapter, viscosity. Many authors have reported that the viscosity of this yielded maximum biodiesel. Then the next, besides pH, besides temperature, besides viscosity, the rheology becomes an important parameter. Then you write about rheology. Then the next paragraph you'll go, so next parameter will come. And then at the end of it, you will crisscross that parameters. However, the pH has got a great influence on viscosity. And the viscosity, pH and temperature has got an interrelated parameter for reduced biodiesel yield. At higher pH, at higher temperature, the lower pH is not appropriate to produce maximum biodiesel because of this. So, and the fourth level, you will interrelate between independent parameters. That is what is called critical review of literatures. So you got it. So that likewise, you have to make your statements in such a way and take it contrary to this. You see, I made some of the red color thing contrary to this, whereas similarly, so you have to use these words. This was supported by, however, several studies indicated. So these are the common sentence. You don't have to invent it. These are the common sentence. Everybody papers will mention, however, therefore, eventually, apparently, consequently, subsequently. These are the very common sentence that they make it. So you also have to learn how to make it. So here, therefore, the present study was designed to evaluate the performance on so and so on this. So when you say all these things, you have to find out the gap in research. You have to find out the gap in research. But when you say the gap in research, the gap, before you confirm the gap, it should be very unique. Nobody else should have done it, and nobody else should have reported. You should make a series of presentations to your guide, to your fellow students, to your people, to confirm, yes, this study was not done. And because once you confirm your research gap, and then you proceed for 2 years, afterwards you come back and you say there is somebody has done it, it becomes a waste of time for you, and you will feel very bad about it. So, and so that's what finally you say, dash et al. And finally make years and orders and come to. So here, this is what I said, table of summary of information. So table of summary of information. So when you make this table of summary of information, what do you have to do exactly? So make authors. First will be your authors and a year. Second will be whatever the parameter. Third will be a parameter. Fourth will be a parameter. Fifth will be a parameter. Sixth will be a parameter. So you make all the parameters that you have paraphrased. You have paraphrased with various parameters. So here you can bring as values. So this critical table. So you can find out here, for example, pH. So he has attempted 6.8 to 7.1, 5, and 2, 4.7 to 5.7, 6.7, 5.5, and no pH was attempted above 10. So on the 10 becomes your gap in research. And for example, the waste also, brewery waste, OFMSW, starch, glucose, high strength brewery waste. So if you make 40 literatures or 50 literatures or 60 literatures like that, in the table will tell you about which waste was not attempted, which pH was not attempted, which temperature was not attempted. So when you have a parameters, the parameters should have a significant impact on your research gap. You cannot take parameters of every parameters into there. which is irrelevant parameter. So those parameters you have to take into here, you are going to look into, and if you want to look at a new parameters, never mind, you mention it at the end of it, and there is nobody has done it, that you have made 100 papers or 50 papers, that becomes your research gap. You got it? So this table summary of literature review is very important, and in your PhD thesis, if you mention this table, the reviewer can easily understand, oh yes, you have made a very elaborate review of literatures. Because who can make this table of summary of literature review? Who is much knowledge enough to understand, to express everything into the literature review, have a complete comprehensive understanding, they only can make this table. So please try to understand how to make this table, and this table normally from the paraphrasing the information, and after paraphrasing you can make the critical summary of literature review, and in here you will easily find out, for example, optimum temperature. So not applicable 37, 34, 35, 55, and nobody, so like you go to the next, this is the next paper, next table. So I just instead of so not making more number of slides, I made only up to 11 papers. You can make up to 50 papers. So in your research thesis, in your PhD thesis, if you have made a 50 papers table of content, summarize the information, you will definitely will not miss the gap in research becomes a plagiaristic. You will not miss at all, because any examiner, anybody who can go through this can easily find out, oh, you have summarized the information out of 50 papers in one table, which is very nice. So please learn how to make this literature review table, which is more important. From here only you will find the gap in research. But once you find the gap in research, please do not leave it and put that gap in research. For example, you found out PH2 was not attempted. Then what you have to do? You have to go back to sciencedirect.com and type a keyword PH2 as an optimum for biodiesel production. If there is anybody has done it, it will show you. If nobody has done, it will tell you 0 result. Okay? Or it will show you only 2 results. But you can go and see what are the approaches they followed. So likewise, please bear in mind, once you find the gap in research have to be many times cross-checked, many times verified, either through sciencedirect.com or Engineering Village or Engineering Compendium. You have to use the Google search machine. Even you can type in Google PH2 as optimum pH for biodiesel, something I am saying, any concept, whatever the research gap you found out, put it into Google search engine, put it into sciencedirect.com and find out whether is it a real gap or not. Because you would have been unnoticed, somebody else would have done some other research paper where you would not have got access to the journal. You would not have got access to the journal. That was available only in IASC library, IASC system, Indian Institute of Science system. So that is why I say initially itself, please be familiar with what are the journals subscribed at IASC, subscribed at IIT Madras, subscribed at Anna University, subscribed at SCRC, so that if you do not find that particular journal, you can go to there and write to them, sir, I need this journal, I need this paper, they can help you out. So please make sure whenever you find the gap in research, you will have to cross check and find out back again whether it is really a non-plagiaristic research gap or not. And there are plagiarism software available within the institute, and you can type those keywords. Also you can find out to your concept whether this paper has been already done, what is the percentage of relativity, what is the percentage of plagiarism. It will say 10%, it will say 10, 20%, 5%, 2%. If it is only 2%, yes, you can go ahead. If it is 90%, you should stop that. Okay? So that is what? A non-plagiaristic research gap. So once ever you find the gap have to be confirmed as a non-plagiaristic. Suggestion to ensure that finally you got a research gap. Where do you confirm it, which is non-plagiaristic? Where do you confirm and come back? Yes, this is indeed a non-plagiaristic research gap. So check with your supervisor. That's what I said. Once you find out the research gap, that gap have to be presented to your fellow researchers, to your team, to your professor, and to your mentor. yes, this is my research gap, whether this research gap is correct or not. Okay, so check with your supervisor, check with a recent or oldest review paper of your topic, previous PhD thesis, back references. So you can go back because PhD thesis will have 100 or 200 references on the back side. You can refer there whether such papers have been published or not. So then check citation index, confirm depth of work of each authors. Sometimes inevitably another researcher may publish similar work in the meantime. So you go ahead with finding it as non-plagiaristic. In that case, find a way at least to conclude something different from your work which someone has not attempted to conclude. Change your data analysis strategy and find a new reason solution to prove originality of your research work. Ultimately, you will have to produce originality of your research work. It's most important what are the different analytical tools you have followed, what are the different evaluation tools you have followed, and how you have arrived at interpretation of your result. That's also more important. So now, so far what you have made is finding a research paper, finding a research gap and confirming your research gap. Do you have any doubt in confirming your research gap? After you get it from the table, you have to dig out the real research gap, and the gap have to be confirmed back with the sciencedirect.com and our engineering village or Google Scholars or whichever the platform. You have to make a presentation of your research gap. That gap you will be, what is the next step after finding the research gap? Conceptualize the gap. After next step to conceptualize, hypothesize the gap. Next step to hypothesize, experiment the gap. Okay, so that is what the information on confirming a non-plagiaristic research gap. So if you have any doubt, this is a doubt asking questions, what I have mentioned to you, please ask me, I will address it. I'll just take few minutes or 3 to 4 minutes to get you if you have any doubt on confirming non-plagiaristic research gap. It is very important to make a table, very important to make a summary table, very important to make a paraphrasing the information. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. If not, I can go to the next. Okay, maybe after I finish it also you can ask me. Okay, so let me go ahead. So this is writing a research papers. So particularly whenever you write a research paper, your abstract maximum of 150 words, keywords, maximum 7 to 8 words, introduction and materials and methods, results and discussion, conclusion, graphs, references, all put together. These are the important content of your writing a research paper. Writing a PhD thesis. So synopsis should be 2 to 3 pages. Organization of the thesis, chapter 1 depicts, chapter 2 depicts, chapter 3 depicts. Introduction, 50% of the whole, 5% of the whole thesis. Aims and objectives, minimum 2 pages. Scope of the study, 3 pages. Literature review, 25 to 30%. Materials and methods, 15 to 20%. Results and discussion, 25 to 30%. Conclusions, 5 to 10%. That's the total percentage of you are distributing each one. So an international standard of writing research article or proposal. So you must use always, because nowadays the IELTS, Intelligence English Language Testing System, is available online. If you want, you can practice your improving your English skill, because ultimately when you write your PhD thesis, who is going to evaluate? A foreign examiner. So you have to fulfill your English style of writing at least to the best communication level, at least at 50% equivalent to a foreign examiner. So please be remembered to write a very good international English language skill. All unit of expressions as million, billion, trillion, no crores and lakhs, and milligram per liter should be milligram per liter. Internationally adoptable methodology, internationally followed grading of fonts of titles, all you have to use it. So composing a title, what the title should be? The short and sweet title, because that's what I said right from the beginning, and how much time our parents would have taken to title our name. So how much time they have taken? 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 2 years? They take 1 year. Oh, my son, I'll keep the name like this. But you know, we do PhD thesis for 3 years and we write 3 big sentences or 4 big sentences, 4 lines. But the movies are done for 3 years and 4 years. They keep the title of the movie in 1 word, 2 words. Can the title of the movie become 3 lines, 4 lines? Will anybody go and see that movie? So we should also learn to simplify the title of the thesis. Do not write a big paragraph of a thesis. Learn to make a simple title of the thesis. Okay? And learn to be simplified. Learn to simplify the topic. And because when I was appearing for the PhD Viva, my examiner asked me, can you tell your thesis? I wrote 2 lines of title. Can you tell your PhD thesis in 2 words? 2 words, which is the very hardest part that you can make. So I simply said waste to energy. Yes, something like that. So you have to derive 2 words of your PhD thesis from 3 words. So it's a very good understanding. Movies are made for 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years. They make only 1 word or 2 words. So that's a very good example for us. And make a good short title and sweet title. And how much time? I told you, attractive title relevant to the paper. And wrong or irrelevant topic, titles for the project. Attractive short title and data acquisition system, image processing, not more than 2 or 2.5 lines. Title should directly convey your paper or the proposal. And the titling is really an art. See, movies title are how attractive. That's why movies are still remembered not only with the title but also with the contents. So please make very short title, not a big title. So suggestions to link the continuity of your words using eventually, consequently, apparently, subsequently, interestingly, nevertheless, contrary to this, supporting to this, therefore, however, for instance, in addition to this, in view of this. These are the words compulsorily, normally you must learn to use it. Because when you write your research paper, you should feel emotionally to express eventually, apparently, consequently, subsequently. You should feel the emotional expression of your communications of your research. Then only somebody will feel, oh, eventually, they use the word eventually. Oh, they used apparently. Because if you use this word, it will create an anguish for the reader. It will create an anguish, curiosity for the reader to know more. Because that is how the movies plays. When they come intermission, they will make you suspected. They make you think, oh, what is there? This time they made an intermission. So like that, you have to make your reader to become anguished, reader to become curious, to read next sentence, next sentence, next sentence, next sentence. That is how the art of writing is. And you must use this word eventually, subsequently, consequently, apparently, interestingly. So in the abstract, definitely you must follow a word interestingly, this was observed. That means when you yourself feel interestingly of a result, the examiner and the reviewer will feel, oh, interestingly they got it. So how you feel? Emotionally, you yourself feel, interestingly I got this result. Eventually this, apparently this, consequently this, subsequently this, nevertheless. So please try to use these words very appropriately in the connecting sentences. So every line should be linked with the other line, no terminated or hanging sentences. And every paragraph should link with the other paragraph. Next part, that's what I told while writing. The pH is an important parameter, so on. So many authors have concluded. And for instance, similarly, contrarily, at the end of it, besides pH, temperature is also one of the important parameters. And the next paragraph, temperature was, many researchers have done on the temperature. This, similarly, contrarily, everything. At the end of it, besides pH and temperature, viscosity is another important parameter, plays a vital role. Then many researchers have attempted on the viscosity. Similarly, contrarily, everything. At the end of it, besides pH, temperature, viscosity, rheology is an important parameter. How you create a connectivity between this? So it should you have to create a connectivity between the lines and connectivity between the paragraph and connectivity between the chapters. So when you finish a chapter, at the end of the chapter, you should have a connectivity in the next chapter. What is going to be? So please make sure these are the prominent words. Normally they use it. If somebody is using these words in an abstract, that means they are a good writer. So learn to use it, but don't use it inappropriately. And learn, because learning is less mimicking in life. In a childhood, when a baby is get a hiccough or choked, mother say like that, the baby also does. So likewise, you read the literatures where they have used eventually, where they have used apparently, where they have used subsequently, where they have used consequently. You learn it and start practicing in your own research paper. So the art of learning is from the papers. The paper will teach you a lesson, where to use, how to use, what context you should use. So please make sure you have a connectivity of writing this information. Create connectivity. Always create connectivities, because connect your ideas with other researchers. Connect your conclusion with other researchers. So when you conclude your conclusion, when you report it, similar results were also reported elsewhere in bracket. These authors also got similar result. That means you got a good result compared to other researchers. Or this result, for example, pH 9 was optimum and yielded a maximum biogas yield, which was consistent with the reported result elsewhere in bracket. Van et al., Lin et al., Dash et al., they also got similar results like you. That is what is called research it. So you must always quote besides your result, consistent result, similar results were observed by somebody else. Consistently this was corroborated with, consistently with the other researchers, you have to mention it. So synopsis writing, something like paragraph, background of the thesis, and abstract writing for, so normally I teach also a course on how to write an abstract, how to write a research paper, because this is another art of making students, how to teach them to write a research paper, because this is the research methodology, is a very broad topic. But how I teach to my own students how to develop the skills of writing a research paper. So in the abstract, when you have, the abstract should have a content. What should be the first line? What should be the second line? What should be the third line? What should be the fourth line? What should be the fifth line? And sixth and seventh line, eighth and ninth line, and 10th line, 11th line, and 12th line. What should have it? It's a generic one. The first line should have, this paper describes what? The title of the paper should come here. And the second line, need for this paper. Third line should say application of this paper. Fourth and fifth line, the experimentation of the paper. Sixth and seventh line, eighth line, interesting results observed by this paper, attributed to the reason why, and also consistent with the R-square values, collaborated with that. And ninth and 10th line, interestingly, the paper concludes what? And 11th and 12th line, this paper recommends what? So that is how you skeletonize the abstract. So likewise, we have how to skeletonize your introduction, how to skeletonize your materials and method, how to skeletonize your results and discussion, how to skeletonize your conclusions. I have got a broad course about it. Anybody is interested, please be approachable, and you can come to me, get my information from the Center for Research, and writing a research paper concepts, you can make it. So this is what is abstract writing. I told you here what all to be used. Interestingly, corroborated well, the experiment was conducted. This paper describes many researchers, experiment was conducted, whereas maxima, minima, and corroborated well, confirms that, contrarily, interestingly, attributed to, recommends, and concludes. These are the main points, we must mention it. Okay, so that is what, and finally, I wanted to sum up this. Whenever you make write a research paper or write a research thesis, I want to sum it up, how you can make it. Now you got a research gap. The first one is your research gap. So when you write your PhD thesis or when you write your research paper, you have to make a table, a big table. The table should contain, the first column should have research gap. Say 5 research gap you got it. The second column should have aims and objectives for each research gap. The third column should have scope of research for each objectives and each research gap. And the fifth column should have experimentation of the hypothesis. Fifth column should have experimentation of a hypothesis. So research gap, you got it, you got a concept, you got an experimentation of hypothesis. Each research gap and the aims and objectives and your scope, what is your experimental method? You have to write, this method I followed for this research gap. This method I followed for this research gap. This method I followed for this research gap. Then after the experimentation of research gap, the next column should have results and discussion. What results you got it for each research gap. There you have to go back and confirm whether the research gap, what attempted you followed a new approach, that approach is achieved or not. So your results and discussion. The next is your conclusion. First research gap, your aims, your experiment, your results, your conclusions in one row. Second research gap, your aims, your objectives, your experimentation, your results, your conclusions in second line. So you should create a connectivity between the research gap, between the objectives, between the scope, between the experiment, between the results, between the conclusions, all should match in a table. That is what is called mapping your research methodology. What is called? Mapping your research methodology. At the conclusion, for example, you got twofold higher biogas yield than or biodiesel yield than what was the bench level. So in the research gap, you can go back and see how much they got it. So you have improved manifold. So likewise, you should have a comparative table containing gap in research first. For the first gap in research, what is your conclusion? For the second gap in research, what is your conclusion? Third gap in research, what is your conclusion? That gap in research and conclusions are matching or not? The gap in research and results are matching or not? If not matching, also no problem. But you should have completed, concisely said about each gap was attempted. Then the examiner cannot say you have title and your discussion and your conclusion has no relevance. Examiner cannot say that. Or your reviewer cannot say that. So before submitting, please make a table and find out first column should have research gaps. 5 gaps, that could be 4 gaps, that could be 3 gaps. For the first gap, what are the objectives you have developed? What is the scope you have developed? What are the experiment you have developed? What results you got it? What conclusion you got it? For the second gap, what you got it? Third gap, you could not experiment it, leave it. Fourth gap, you got an interesting result, take it. So likewise, this is what is called mapping of the research methodology. At the end of it, whether you got a PhD thesis, whether you got a research paper, whether you got a research proposal, this mapping of this research methodology very, very important. So it should start from the research gap. After the research gap, your concept should come. After the concept, your hypothesis should come. After the hypothesis, your experiment should come. What experiment you adopted? After experiment, your results would come. So that is how a complete mapping of the research methodology. You all will prepare the table before submitting thesis so that it get you a complete overview of what research you have done. Okay? Hope you got it. Thank you very much. Thanks for your real time that you have made it. I hope I have not made anybody to sleep. I have been observing. I feel so because our Kumaresan sir said, a good teacher will never make a student to sleep after 2 o'clock. If the students are sleeping, it's the fault of, I can't say that. Okay, so good. Thank you very much. So I'll start with the questions again, like in the morning. So what has been taught in the afternoon? And now this time, it will go in a cross line because in order to minimize my time, one row, each one will say, not everybody because I'm sorry, I could not give you more opportunity to everybody. And it will go start from the first row, first person, second row, second person, third row, third person, fourth row, fourth person, fifth row, fifth person, like that it will go. You can take one message. So first row, first person, second. Good, fast.
Key notes are indexed in a front page of the paper for future references.
Beautiful. Keywords ought to be indexed in the front page of your research paper, research article. For that, anytime you take the paper, those keywords, whatever you understood, it will be final. Please write down this take-home message, which is very important for you. Please. Third, yeah.
Proper cross-reference statements.
Proper?
Cross-reference statements. The statements that are cross-referenced.
Proper objective statement.
Any statement that is cross-referenced.
Okay, cross-reference statements. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, he says, compare with your cross-reference statements. Okay, thank you.
They show the IQ level of the
Before?
They show the IQ level of the researcher.
Okay, they show the IQ level of the person. Okay, yeah, when you go very deep discussion or something, it shows the IQ level of a person. Very good. Next, please. Next, man, quick.
Sir, noting the points with the date, whatever we are writing from the literatures, we have to note it with the date and tabulate it.
Okay, whenever you write your literatures, write with the table and date. So which date you followed, if you missed it or not. So after 1 month or 2 months, you can show it to your guide. In 30 days, I have read 30 papers. Good, thank you. Next, please, quick.
There should be a connectivity between the research gap, objective, scope, methods, results, like
Yes.
the mapping of research method.
Beautiful. Mapping of your research methodology. That means connectivity between methodology. Whatever your research gap you got it, your gap in research should be on the research gap. And your conceptualization should be on the gap. And hypothesis should be on the concept. And experimentation of the hypothesis. Aims and objectives is based on that. So, in your first row, all should come. In the second row, second gap. Third row, third gap. Fourth row, fourth gap. Fourth gap, what results you got it, what conclusion you got it, what experiment you did, which experimental methods you adopted. So, everything should be mapped and to create a connectivity between research gap up to conclusions. Create a connectivity between research gap and up to conclusion. Thank you very much. Next, please.
Choosing highly relevant parameters for chapter-wise filtration.
Yeah, well, filtration, choose only the highly relevant parameters. Very good, excellent. We'll go this way. Yeah. We'll cross this way. Yeah, please, quick. Next presenter has come, I suppose. Yeah, thank you, sir. Sorry, just in 2 minutes I'll finish. Yeah, please, next.
The order should be in chronological way so that perception can be done easily.
Chronological order of putting the orders of authors. 99, 2000, 2001, 2002 in a cross reference. Beautiful. Next, please.
Pragmatic approach.
Pragmatic approach. Yeah, please make a pragmatic approach. Alternative approach, whenever you make it it's pragmatically feasible or not. Yeah, next, please, quick.
Suggestion to the links of consistency.
Pardon?
Suggestions to the links of consistency words.
List of, I will come there, no problem.
Words.
List of?
Suggestions to the consistency words.
List of suggestions for?
Words.
Yeah, the words which eventually, apparently. Can you tell what are the words? No, without saying the note. No, whenever I say that's what the learning is. Okay, this is not reading, that's not studying. You have come here for learning.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, say without, what are the words?
Eventually, consequently.
And okay, next. Yeah, what are the words?
Eventually,
consequently,
apparently,
subsequently, apparently,
interestingly,
nevertheless,
contrary,
in view of this. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, next please, quick.
Sir, it is important to understand the non-attempted approaches and to analyze its merits and demerits.
Oh, beautiful. Please do remember, it is important to analyze the non-attempted approaches. Why this concept was not attempted? Was there any lacuna? Were there any demerits? So that they would have already said some demerits, that is why they did not attempt. But you should not take the same problem and waste your years. And non-attempted approaches should be critically analyzed before you take it for your experiment. Next, please.
Beginning and end year of literature information.
Beginning and end year of the literature review should be.
Information is very important.
Yeah, it's very important. Find out the beginning. How do you find out the beginning year and end year, madam? Reading review articles. How do you find out the beginning and end year of your research? Read the review articles of the oldest or latest review article, from where you will find which year to which year the references they have made. You can find out from the references. Next, please.
Notebook-based filtration.
Notebook-based filtration. How many of you like it? Notebook-based filtration. That's my style of making it. Notebook-based filtration is a permanent property for you to show it to your grandchildren also, because other things will go away. Yes, next, please.
Prepare 3 notes: meeting note, lab note, literature review.
Oh, beautiful. Prepare 3 notes, very important. What are the notes? Meeting notes with your guide, lab book with your experiment, literature review notebook are very important before you complete your PhD. Next, please.
Compare information with other authors. Compare information with other authors.
Compare information with other authors and write consistently. Similar results were observed. Compare it. Yeah, next, please. Quick. Yeah, next, please. Come. Start. Quick.
If you have any dissimilar information given by authors, we have to provide reason for that.
Yeah, if there is any dissimilar information given by the authors, you have to give a reason for it, which is attributed to. You always should give, if there is a dissimilar information, you should reason out. It's very important. Thank you. Good message. Next, please.
So the perception power, intelligent quotient and the emotional quotient.
Besides the depthness of your...
in the critical review of literature.
Okay. See, the beautiful message given. Emotional quotient, intelligent quotient and perception power makes you how deep you have gone into your research. So improve your perception power, emotional quotient and IQ by doing yoga or meditations. That's what you are saying. Very good. Good message. Anybody else? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for your nice interactive session. Thanks a lot.